10:45. Oh, that's right. Get inside.
Thank you very much. You guys excited?
Yeah.
Yes, the middle window.
Take your window seat. Pick your window. Marie, yeah. I don't know. Say by. Oh. That's downtown Portland. Potato donuts, Blue Lobster. Look at the line for Maine donuts. Potato donuts. Fight right.
Another thing too is it gets loud around here, and noises and this and that. Their holiday weekend. Very good. Yeah. Anybody gonna go on the boat later, or already been on the boat, or been out to our islands yet?
Going on the boat.
Anybody? Yeah.
Later.
Later? Well, it seems to be a good day to do that.
Why?
This summer we're working waterfront commercial here, and what built our city basically, as we are today, and have been quite some time. We were actually the original capital of Maine, but we've always been pretty much the highest populated city in Maine. We are the metropolis. 68,000 people live in Portland year round. And what built our city is our harbor. And we'll see it again here in a second. And what really is notable about our harbor is that it's a naturally deep harbor. And Portland, derived from Portlanda, means land surrounding a harbor. So we're basically surrounded by a harbor all around. And anybody from New York? Well, the person disappeared. They went that way. Anyway, so here to our left, that's our customs house, and that was built in 1871. A nice testament to how busy a port we've always had, as we brought about $1 million in tariffs and taxes on trade when we built that. And to our right, there's the harbor. A good look at our working waterfront there in action. Lobster boats, place to eat. And this mural here is what it used to look like in the 1800s. Right there, you had a Grand Trunk Railroad, a steamship. Barrels filled with fish, pickle, and rum are 3 major food groups back then, and for some of us still today. And then there's a chance to go up to our island here to our right. That's the Casca Bay lines. Everybody hear me back there?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the Casca Bay lines there. We actually, anyone want to take a guess how many islands we have in Maine? 100? Add another 0, 3,500. Yeah, 3,500. Matter of fact, Maine is French. Has an E at the end for mainland of all those islands. So you can rent bicycles, golf carts, and you can have yourself a good time. Or you can just go on the 20-minute garden. California? Where else? Michigan. Go Blue. Where else? Florida? Where else? Jersey. Go Rutgers, go Big Ten. All right, where else?
New Hampshire.
I see some of the New York Mets, but are you from New York or? New Jersey. New Jersey, okay. All right, some cruise ships leaving Jersey, New York, Boston, and you can come on up here and go parts of Canada. So if you ever thought of an Alaska cruise, try to give us a try first, because we will be back full strength at 160 or so.
Wow.
So if you want to do that, that might be a good idea. And then over there, we're going to go along the promenade too, but this takes you on the bird's eye view through here. And on the narrow gauge right there, still in operation, of course, there. We used to bring a lot of lumber from up north and maple down here on that, as well as passengers, you can see. It was built at the Portland Company, we're going to see in a minute. Also, we had the Grand Trunk Railroad here too. That came here in conjunction with that. So the Grand Trunk Railroad, especially those from Michigan, Grand Funk Railroad, the rock and roll band, yeah. So it started right here in 18 all the time, right? All right. To our left, that Boulder, that's where Henry Wadsworth Longfellow was born in 1807 right there. Anybody familiar with the great fireside poet, along with Emerson and Washington Irving? Yeah. Those of you, anybody who's not familiar with them?
Yeah.
You know Paul Revere, right? Paul Revere, the Midnight Ride of Paul Revere. He wrote Paul Revere's Ride. So we actually know, through his works, he still lives on, mostly. And of course, Paul Revere. There was other people that did the same ride, such as Dr. Prescott, who actually got to Concord first, and Jonathan Dawes. But like many novels, centralized into Paul Revere, who was a larger-than-life character, but more so through his work of literature. Here to our right, this is the Portland Company, or it was. We still have the Marine Complex, but we built 600 steam locomotives there. At the Marine Complex, we built 160 vessels for the Navy and merchant ships, such as that steam sail ship that we saw in the mural. This is a national landmark now, and you can see someone spray painted it a lot, so we got a lot of work to do. So hopefully they'll stop spray painting it so we can get the work done. But it's going to be a museum. And a lot of the sail ships, even 5 ironclad warships, sail from here right there. It's changed over the years, of course. Now I just recently had a tooth pulled, so I'm not allowed to have any candy, which I normally do, so forgive me sometimes if my mouth gets dry a little bit. One of my favorite 1870s. In great condition, you can see. The balcony on the second story right there actually was destroyed in a windstorm when a tree branch fell on it, and now repaired. And then we have some like early 1800s, and these are Napoleonic era, but mostly Victorian. The reign of Queen Victoria was 1837 to 1901, which most of the buildings were built on the peninsula and off the peninsula, many of them. To our right, that condo right there, well, that is Reagan era. We call it the sore thumb because you can't see the harbor from here right now. But here to our left are some more beautiful homes, late Victorian there. Those captain's homes, those 4 right there, as they have a great view of the harbor. So the entrance to the harbor right there, and then to the left is Casca Bay. And they had their ships mooring down there, where now there's some sailboats. And you can see one of the, out my window, you can see one of the ferries returning from the islands you can take. This is Fort Allen. It used to be a Revolutionary War fort at one time. All that's left from the Revolutionary War days, Fort Allen, now Fort Allen, work they dug, and then those 2 right there with the cannons rest behind. Those cannons right there are for Civil War era. The granite bench here to our left, that carved out, that is for the fallen soldiers of the Civil War to rest upon and share the view here today with us. And to our right is another memorial, this headstone right there with the flag on it. That is for the victims of 9/11, as we lost 5 Mainers in the Trade Tower attacks when they transferred from Jetport to Logan. And that is a memorial for them and all the bereavement for the loved ones left behind. This gun pointed right at the ferry right now. Well, that was recovered off the coast of Havana, Cuba. It was sunk in 1898, the ship it was from. It was a major catalyst for the Spanish-American Civil War in 1898, as the newspapers read the next morning of its sinking. Does anybody remember the name of that ship?
Maine.
There we go. Thank you very much. Remember the Maine. And that's why it's here, in memory of those who served, especially from Maine, protecting their namesake. Eventually we got Teddy Roosevelt and the Rough Riders, right? And he preserved all of our national parks, most all of our national parks, including Acadia, one of the first. There with Yellowstone and others. To our right, out there, there's those islands. There's Peaks Island, like I said, the most popular one to go to. Big Diamond, Little Diamond, Chesapeake, Long Island, as we are basically the Manhattan of Maine. We also have a Long Island. I think there's some kayakers out there right now. That's really the only way to get out there, kayak or a water taxi. So around the corner is Portland Paddle Company, and you can actually take a tour out there. Does anybody like to come out? Never put up, actually, because the war never reached here, actually. It was just in preparation. They set up the first village here. It was a first settlement, if you will, that stayed. The first one before it actually disappeared in 1623 without a trace. But they set up the first successful one in 1632, given permission by Ferdinand of Gorges from Great Britain. He was the first viceroy, and he was given a land grant of what is known as Maine now by King James I. But in 1632, it was a fishing village, and they ended up having a fishing village here, brought livestock over, and we'll see where they pastured a lot of that livestock. Then eventually we named that fort after him, Ferdinand of Gorges. But the island, because the early colonists, of course, they used this for grazeland, but they pastured their, I don't know what they call it, but stored their pigs out there to keep them from going hog wild.
Hog wild.
True story. Here to our right, this is the Mast and Shield from the USS Portland. A heavy cruiser in World War II, received 16 battle stars, one of the highest decorated ships in the war. So this is a memorial for all those who served World War II and all the Navy. And when this ship eventually, like most of the ships, were either used for target practice or like ours, was scrapped for steel, they eventually got around to sending that to us via Amazon Prime, so we saved a few bucks on shipping. But a beautiful day over here on the Eastern Park, beautiful day in the neighborhood, a beautiful day in the neighborhood. If you ever watch Mr. Rogers, we are on a trolley. And this is basically like our Central Park. If you think of us as a Manhattan, this would be our Central Park. It was designed by the Olmsted brothers, the Eastern Promenade Park. It is the eastern end of our peninsula, but if you consider our islands too, it is central in Portland. But it was designed by the Olmsted brothers, and their father was Frederick Olmsted, who did many parks throughout the United States, Boston Commons, and including his most notable Central Park, Frederick Olmsted, and they did this in his honor, their father's honor. And some more of those Lake Victorians to our left, as this is the Victorian Peninsula now. Longfellow called it the Gem by the Sea. So we are the Gem by the Sea to our right. And this is a great place for a picnic. And if you started walking from the Ocean Gateway Terminal, there's a pathway down there. And also the train goes down there if you want to take that tour. And there's a beach down there too if you want to go for a walk on the beach. And then the kayaks, if you want to rent them down there, there's the Portland Paddle Company down there. There's probably a food truck or two down there as well. Stand-up paddleboards if you want to do stand-up paddleboard yoga. And a great place to watch the sunrise. We are the first state to see the sunrise. If you want to come here in the morning and watch the sunrise, perfect place. And then down the street's a playground, War of 1812 memorial of it. Still this old-fashioned way, and many food trucks. So you can also just take advantage of the peninsula. So if you have a map or anything like that, it's a good way to do it. And this takes us from one end of the peninsula to the other, nearly 3 miles, Congress does. And this was Munjoy Hill. Well, it is now. It was very thick forest, all of Maine. We are the pine tree state. And so this is all very thick forest through here, and they built their home. And it's actually a pretty practical way to do something on here is you can actually visit Congress all day long. You can watch the sunrise around 6:30 or so, a little bit before 6:30, and then continue on through Congress, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and shop. And then by the time you get to the Western Promenade, watch the sunset, especially on shorter days as our days get shorter.
Wow.
Nightfall reaches about 3:45 in the winter. This is the highest point of elevation in Portland, 167 feet above sea level, and why they built this now National Landmark to our left. This is the Portland Observatory from 1807. It's a maritime museum in there. And it's kind of like a lighthouse, but what it was it expedited our shipping process when Lemuel Moody had it built. He retired and charged 5 cents a ship. And the observer's job was to check out the manifest when they saw a ship in the harbor come in. And then he would raise 3 flags to communicate with the crow's nest out there to expedite the shipping process. And it's the last one of its kind in all North America. And it's open until 4:30 today if you want to inquire ahead to buy tickets. It's definitely worth it, that 7-story view. And the view here to our left is the entrance to the harbor, so it's a perfect place for it. That's why they built it here, the entrance to the harbor. So this is a way of directing traffic and another testament to how busy of a port we had, and very important after the Great Fire. Now you might not have heard of the Great Fire yet, the Portland Great Fire, but you have of the Chicago 1871 Missouri Canal, perhaps, right? And that's why you haven't heard of ours, because 5 years earlier, where ours was, 1866, and quickly eclipsed, if you will. But nonetheless, nonetheless, ours was the largest fire in American city up to that point. We lost 1,800 homes and businesses throughout the center of the city and came this way. All these homes that were the colonists built. And right up that hill there, 10,000 people were left homeless. I do want to make one note here to our left. If you get a chance today, or sometime while you're here, 1668 that cemetery is from. And it's one of the oldest in all of New England. And they have a tour every day at 4 o'clock. Early colonists, Revolutionary War, War of 1812. So if you want to go there, a lot of links to Massachusetts. Because when that cemetery was done, and all the way up until 1820, we were part of the Massachusetts settlement event. No, actually 1652. And it was, yeah, 16. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull over here up here to our right to catch up a little bit, everybody. We got some cars behind us, and sometimes they'll pass around us very fast, and none of us don't want that to happen. So I'm going to pull over here real quick. Sometimes the timing just doesn't work, you know what I mean? It's just like boom, 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 boom. And now we don't have anybody real behind us. So real quick, it happened July 4th morning, and it was 1866. So I'm sure you guys could take a guess on how that started, right? Basically fireworks. And everybody, this is a year after the Civil War had just ended. So everybody was planning a big parade over there after about 7 years of war, you know, basically, well, 7 years since the beginning. And a lot of the people were buried there at the Western Cemetery, which the parade was held at. They wanted them part of it. And as they were there that morning, there was kids at the lumber yard playing with firecrackers. And they set the trash can on fire accidentally, and then it was next to the rum distillery. It's actually 2 doors down from the rum distillery, and once it hit the rum distillery, it quickly just caught on fire, and everybody was caught off guard. I'll tell you more about it, but it came right through here, and even though only 2 people died, that's probably the best part, and about 30 people were injured. They lost all their homes, you know, 1,800 buildings and homes, like I said, largest in American history. But when we rebuilt, we built many of those homes we just saw. And here to our right, the Lady Immaculate Conception, the first church afterwards. And this Catholic church, home of the Archdiocese Archbishop of Maine, was the first, the bishop that started was the first African-American Catholic bishop in the United States. And the steeple still plays a very prominent role. So when we go to this intersection, we're going to see the tallest building in all of Maine. But before we do that, to our left, if you look really quick, this white building with peach trim right there, that's unofficially the shortest building in all of Maine. Just to give you a little contrast. It's an Astro Coffee shop. Just opened up last year. And it's always busy, so they must have good coffee. I've never went there for coffee. I always go to Cumberland Farms. $1.07 for any size coffee. And you just test each spigot to find the freshest. Now here to our right, there is the tallest building, set back a little bit. It's Franklin Towers, 17-story retirement community with no elevator.
Oh no.
No, it has an elevator. I just want to make sure everybody's still awake. That's all. That's all. But it's just shy of the Lady Immaculate Conception steeple. So that's everything in Maine is shorter than the steeple of the Lady Immaculate Conception. And to our right, some of those buildings survived the fire, but everything in front of us, behind us, and to our left did not. All the way up to the Longfellow House, everything was destroyed. And when Longfellow came back here from Harvard, where he taught down there at Harvard and Cambridge, he said, desolation, desolation, desolation. It was all ash, right? Pompeii, that sepulchre city. So he basically compared it to what Pompeii must look like after Mount Vesuvius. Short on building materials, of course, Vermont helped out, and Connecticut, and a lot of firms across the United States. All of our fire stations there to our left, all built after the Great Fire because they were all burned down in the Great Fire. Our City Hall, and the New York City Hall. But the one built right after the Great Fire here, as it was the town hall down the street, burned down, and then they rebuilt it, the City Hall right here for 25,000 people, that one burned down too. Yeah. And it was munitions in the City Hall cellar. And also, John Calvin Stevens was the head designer on this too, with that firm. But everything through here, Old Port, this is all done in a 5-year time period coming up here. So we left it just a minute ago on the other side near the harbor there, but we're entering from the other way. And lots of details. So all these firms across America, Canada, some from international firms, and all that collaborated here, and a little bit of a competition. So you can see all these details. For being in a hurry, they left a lot of details behind, and they didn't cut any corners. So literally to our left, that's a rounded one there. Just give you an idea. And when they rebuilt, very ambitious. They said, well, let's rebuild, but let's unify east to west. So the whole east to west, you'll see the brick sidewalks in excellent condition, original curbs, and underneath us, for the most part, everywhere is original cobblestone under the pavement here. And this right here is Post Office Park, and when they redesigned a more, as you see, no wooden structures, or more fireproof, fire retardant city. Lots of parks designed through here, but their original purpose is actually fire breaks, the way the Eastern Cemetery acted as. Because a lot of people were hiding out in that Eastern Cemetery there. There in farmland, and there's trees were around them. They got ahead of the fire, grabbed furniture, whatever they could spare. And then, of course, eventually about 1,000 Union tents were lined up there at Munjoy Hill in the Eastern Cemetery and surrounding area until this was built. Because a lot of people lived over these, and still do, over these buildings, over these businesses. This is Exchange Street, and this is the Victorian Rodeo Drive in Exchange Street, and a little bit higher end shops. And what makes it Victorian is the hanging signs. The hanging signs, except Key Bank, they don't play along, that's the only one. But the rest are all hanging, and all the fixtures, mostly all original. And the pilasters, all hand carved, and the printing capitals, they really did it nice. I always compare it to today. Can we do something similar or the same? Of course, you know, with red tape, pretty much not, I don't think. But back then, this was all before red tape, or tape itself wasn't even invented. Yeah, Venice without the water, eh? Well, there was actually water up here, so it's kind of funny you mention that. Oh, yeah. Yeah, this is the way it was in the Victorian days. Before, you know, Instagram and Facebook or TV, they would go out there and compete for the best sign painting and bring you into their stores. And in front of us, the building in front of us, right on the other side, is where I picked you up. So if you go to our left, Moulton Street, just go one block, and you're here again at 4 Exchange. And then you'll notice this psychic sign to our left. I didn't foretell that, but the yelling there. But once you get here again, deja vu, have a good time.
Okay.
I don't know if that made any sense. Whatever. Neither do psychics, no. All right, so here to our left. This is all survived. Like this block here, 1829. This all survived the Great Fire, but everything to our right didn't. And this right here, when we were a state, we became a state in 1820, part of the Missouri Compromise, because Missouri loves company, of course. Telling that joke ever since. And this all was built at that time period. And we were the capital. We were the original capital, Portland was, from 1820 to 1832. And this is all a result here to our left. And thankfully survived, as everything forward did not. It'll be more evident once we get to where the old capital was, where the majority of the building boom took place. And of course, we had our second building boom after the Great Fire, and after things relaxed a little bit in the 1880s. 3 real building booms. And this right here is actually a 4th building boom. This is Carter-Reagan era. We got a parking garage, 2 ATMs, and you can see what a difference 100 years makes as far as architecture. Back then they didn't have concrete. I don't think they ever used it as an aesthetic of quality, but it's up to the next generation to perhaps maybe cut the difference somehow. These are a little bit more, well, they got circles on that one to our left, the TD Bank there. Couple circles. Anybody have any questions? Down that right way to the right, you can see these interesting sandstone reliefs on the buildings, and just a beautiful view right down there, all nicely preserved in our historical district. And they're doing a walking tour, and he's talking about Mr. Johnson here to our right. He's an actual lobsterman back in 1939 World's Fair in New York City. This represented our lobster trade. And he posed from that, for that I mean, Mr. Johnson and Bailey's Island. And what he's doing is he's placing a wooden peg into that lobster's claw. He's placing a wooden peg into that lobster's claw. And we use rubber bands now, of course. Does anybody want to take a guess why we started doing that? Well, you know, they will pinch your fingers, you know, break your finger, mangle your finger, hand, whatever. But it's actually not for us. It's not for our protection of theirs. It's actually protection from each other, if you will. So what happens is when the lobsterman puts them in the live well, and they don't like being around each other in close proximity. If you ever watched Deadliest Catch, the crab have no problem. But lobsters, what they'll do is they will latch onto each other's claws in a sign of, you know, or a show of force or whatever, and for fighting ground, for eating grounds and mating grounds. And they'll latch onto each other's claw, and the stronger one will tear off the weaker's claw. So that's their way they battle, you know, like deer with antlers, moose with antlers, whatever. That's theirs. So that's why they started doing that. And of course, rubber band is a little bit more effective because now it's more of a safety thing too as well. But when that statue was done and represented our lobster trade, it really wasn't always the popular food it is today. Back in the 1800s, we used to have a canneries around the area, and we used to can it and fed it to our prisoners at the Maine State Penitentiary 6 days a week and gave them Sunday off because it was basically a form of punishment. Farmers would go out in the shallows in the summer and the spring when they came in to molt and bait and use it for fertilizer. But then, at the turn of the century, it started becoming pretty popular, and that's when our lobster trade kicked off. Here's the Federal Building. If you notice, we're on a detour right now. It's not really a normal part of the tour, but we're going to get a little extended one. And when that statue in 1939 was done, we caught about 100,000 pounds at that time. Today, it's up to 96 million. Most we caught is 127 million 2 years ago. Last year, demand was down a little bit. So while you're here, if you're wanting to eat lobster, eat as much as you can because we got to get that quota back up. Get to 130. And then, there's the City Hall. All right, City Hall again. I got to go there pretty soon to pay some bills. Site of the first church here to our right is coming up. It's the first parish. But before this granite church, it was the Little Bethlehem, the Quaker Church, the first church on the peninsula that built that started that cemetery back there. But it was destroyed during the Revolutionary War. Actually, it was just on the onset of the Revolutionary War after the Battle of Lexington Concord. We kidnapped Captain Moab when he was born out there at Fort Allen in the harbor. We kidnapped him. Right after the Battle of Lexington Concord, but we had to let him go because after a few weeks didn't want to pay the ransom. We came back for revenge. That's why that was our third fire. The Great Fire was our fourth and biggest. If you started walking from the Lobsterman statue, you'd end here at the main square here. This is our monument square. That's our Soldiers and Sailors Monument, dedicated to the 5,000 Portlanders who volunteered and the Portland Sons who died for the Union there. And that was done by Franklin Simmons. The base was done by Richard Morris Hunt, who also did the base for the Statue of Liberty. And the longest surviving brick home on the peninsula, to our right. This is where Longfellow actually grew up and where the fire ended. All thanks to the people that protected it from the fire. This is a national landmark, 1785. Peleg Wadsworth had it commissioned. He had it built after the Revolutionary War was over, right? And you can go there for a full tour, and it's run by the Maine Historical Society. Call ahead because I don't know what the hours are today. If it is open, I don't know. And this is where Longfellow grew up until he was 14 years old, and they went up to Bowdoin College, and he was ended up being classmates. Does anybody know who his classmate up there at Bowdoin College was? Wrote the Scarlet Letter. Nathaniel Hawthorne. And that's why he ended up teaching at Harvard for the rest of his life, because Nathaniel Hawthorne was down from that area. And then he taught down there and stayed there forever, and now he's still there. He's buried in Cambridge. We can learn all about it there. In our Revolutionary War and our history, really, really rich history there.
Good.
And this is our Arts District, as we're back on Congress Street again. Starting with those stores right there, the Maine College of Art, the main anchor through here, starting it. Antique maps here to our right at the Mainly Art Gallery. You can get really antique maps, really, really neat. To our left is Rennie's The Maine Adventure. That's our 5 and dime, 1,000 times better than Walmart. And a lot of these places you can visit from the other side. Free Street. Coming up here is our 5 points that causes that. The Sock Shack, neat little destinations peppered throughout all these restaurants. Pizza, Cantonese soul food. Strange Maine, it's basically to our left, that building, 1821, 200 years on the registry. 200 years old. It's like our Spencer's Gifts. Our Starbucks is from 1828. Yeah, it's an apothecary, all from back in the day. And if you look back, it's our Flatiron building. Like I said, it's kind of like we're a mini Manhattan, if you will. 3 stories versus theirs, I think, is 20 stories. And if you're a Back to the Future fan, this is Congress Square, where the old Capitol was across the street. In our clock tower, just like in the movie, doesn't work. Except we have another one across the street, don't work either. We have 2 clock towers that don't work. But the clock over there, I think it does work. And someday, when that don't work, we'll just make 4 more that don't work over there to our left at the Portland Museum of Art. See those circles there? Perfect spot. So you can go to the Portland Museum of Art. I don't know if it's open today. There's some places like you gotta check on the phone and then it changes your hours here and there. You just never know. So, anybody have any questions?
Fish.
Here's a real good example from architecture back then. The Baxter Library to our right. Really beautiful sandstone architecture there.
Wow.
And you can see the buildings, if you see the thickness of those walls. I mean, everywhere. The whole city really holds the heat well for the most part. And with short summers and lengthy winters, it just makes sense that that's a practical reason to keep these. That's really what we're going for, is to hold the heat. And there's the Blue Note Jazz Club to our left. So you want to go there. Even though this is a holiday, it seems like Mondays for me are always lots more obstacles. Like, just feels that way. Here to our left is the Longfellow Square. And that's in his armchair right there. That was done in 1885. And underneath there is his books of his works, and inside there is a box containing all the names of the children that raised funds for it. They went around 3 years collecting funds for that, and the names are all written there forever.
In the mug?
Or as long as the paper lasts, they're written on. There's another national landmark up here to our left about the Prohibition. Everybody's probably heard of Al Capone. And he was basically, if you think of as the Joker of the Prohibition, here's Neil Dowd, basically the Batman of Prohibition. He's the one that started it. He's known as the father of Prohibition. And you can go there for a tour, run by the Women's Temperance Movement, basically started that, and still to this day. They've basically hit the reset button ever since marijuana's legalization. But you can learn more about Neil Dowd there when he became mayor and banned alcohol here in the state of Maine. He helped write the Maine Law, which 19 other states followed suit in, which was known as the Maine Law, and led to the federal prohibition. So it basically started right here. We had a really healthy rum trade, bringing a lot of maple from up north down here. And there was a street vendor on every street corner, just about, selling ladles of rum for 5 cents a ladle. It's really hard to get people back to work. So he banned it. He helped ban it. This is a historical neighborhood, by the way. This is the Western Promenade, and we're going to see the first building built over here. Actually, it was a home. And it was Neil Dow's cousin here to our left, Jonathan Dow House. You can see it right there on the plaque. 1820. So in 1820, we became the state capital. This was all forest, and then that home was built, and this whole area was cleared out, including over there at the Capitol. So this is the oldest surviving home over here, from 201 years old there. And, well, they were both from a Quaker family, Jonathan and Neil, cousins, but they didn't agree on the Prohibition. 2 things they did agree on, though, was they were early proponents of women's rights and the suffrage movement eventually, and also abolitionist movement. 201 years old. If you see to our right, some of these sidewalks are wobbly, so if you come over here for a bike ride or for a nice walk, just keep that in mind. But what happens if they get too wobbly to our left is concrete. So you got these nice brick pathways or concrete. There you go. Not what it used to be. But I think it's making a comeback. I think we'll do it again. I don't know. But you can see they hold up pretty well over the years. So it's a neat little neighborhood to go for a walk. Nice change of pace from the east and middle. Today, mostly year-round, a lot of single-family homes still passed down, like this one here to our left, this Queen Anne Revival from 1841, 180 years old, and you can see the condition it's in. And there's all types of architecture here because what happened was, when this area was being developed, the Army Corps of Engineers, we built a military installation we'll see in a minute. A lot of people that represent us down there in Washington, D.C., you know, our new legislature, our senators and representatives, got word around it was a great place to build a summer home, where we're going to see here now mansions. So these are all 1820s and 30s. Predate the robber baron mansions, what we were normally used to, by 50 years. Not bad for 100 days or something. So there's all types of architecture throughout the United States, and nice examples everywhere. So, like I said, a little bit of a live version of HGTV, if you will. And here to our right is an old stable from back then, or what they would call a carriage house. And you have the hay loft over the top there. And they take off the siding back and forth every 5 years. 5 years, 5 years. They take it all off and redo it and put it back up. Lots of work. And over there is the old military installation, much larger now. It started out in 1824 when it's finished as the armory, and then eventually moved to Fort Williams in 1873, where the Portland headlights at. And when that happened, it became the hospital for the first time, and you could stay there for $1 per month. Now you can't even get a toothpick for that, and we are the toothpick capital of the world, Maine is. So you'd think you'd get one for free. Plus we've got 95% of our forest still intact, original forest. Now it's the Maine Medical Center. Well over 6,000 people there employed, our largest employer here in Portland. And well, these were all summer homes and mansions back in the day. They're all year round, and a lot of people that work there or attend the hospital live here now. And also home to the late Barbara Bush Children's Hospital, dedicated in '93. And why are the mansions built over here? Well, you'll see out there to our right, and we got a good view. Yep. Now, let's see if we see, nope, we don't see that. But that's the White Mountains, New Hampshire, that mountain range there. It's a great place for the sunset, of course. But most importantly, for these homes, these mansions, think about it, political figures and legislation and professionals, was Mount Washington, the highest peak to the far right, but we can't really see it right now. 6,252 feet. Most severe weather on the planet, some of the most severe weather, up to 180-mile gusts of winds. But weather station. These mansions were built here for that. So say Mary Kay Thomas, who owned this one here to our left, her husband was a politician, she'd go down there in Washington, D.C., say, come on, visit me in my summer cottage, I got a great view of Mount Washington, you know, the symbolism of it. And this gentleman, he's checking out this statue here. There's the airport beyond. This is Thomas Brackett Reed, born and raised here. Thomas Brackett Reed was a 3-time Speaker of the House. He was in the same circle of friends with McKinley, Theodore Roosevelt, actually Mark Twain as well. And you might not have heard of him, but he is actually the head writer of the 16th Amendment. And they call him Czar Reed because he was basically the one that gave the, in Reed laws, he came up with the modern voice to the Speaker of the House before they really didn't have a voice. And when Mark Twain spoke at his funeral, he said that he was as truthful in action as he was in words, and that he was a great orator. He almost became our president, actually, narrowly defeated by McKinley in the Republican primary. Then they had a falling out because of the Spanish-American Civil War. That's when he retired. But some more of these Victorian mansions to our left. Actually, these are pre-Victorian. This is a Tudor revival. The next one is a Georgian coming up here. It's an English style. Nice and subtle. And the next one is a post-federal revival, and it's actually the only one outside the 19th century. It's actually 1911, so it's 20th century. And it's what we think of as when we think of a mansion, because it's right at the end of the robber baron mansions there. Yes. George West Mansion. He was an industrialist, and if you want to put that information in your phone, you can see the ballroom inside. It's pretty neat. They're starting to hold events there now, if you want to inquire. So we're on the western promenade, the other end of the peninsula, and there's many blocks through here without interruption of the historical neighborhood. And you can see the sunset over, see the sunset over here, and Fore River, F-O-R-E, which feeds the harbor. There's another Georgian to our left. Notice the brick, how it's a little crooked here and there, because they're all done one at a time, but it gives it its personality, like this one. There's not a straight line on this one. Or in the Picasso painting. Or even Whistler. Now here to our left, this, you got the slate roof, the granite stonework, and basically you can find that anywhere. It's called rubble stone if you go to the beaches or surrounding areas. If a farmer kicks up with the plow, it's a field stone. But the idea, though, is that, well, you know, if you think of it that way, it's all free, and these houses are pretty practical. I'd like to see a whole neighborhood full of them. But, you know, if you go to a building, and even the slate, too, it's everywhere. But if you go to a building supply company, it's quite expensive. So don't let anybody know I told you this, but you know, when you leave here on vacation, you can come back 30 times or so, maybe you'll be able to build one of your own. Or get together and make a timeshare. I wish I had an Ed McMahon right there. Because like when his jokes failed, he always had Ed McMahon. Here's a federal here to our left, another federal, and look at the driveway there. Well, they wouldn't call it a driveway, they'd call it a carriageway back then. And you can see all the years of use still here. Service entrance to the side and the front entrance. And if you continue to look to our left, this is the carriage road for all those homes we just saw, mansions. So they drop everybody off at the front, and then the horses and the carriages come back here to the rear for the night. And then to our right, there's a carriage stone here. You'll see one at the Victorian Mansion, those of you on the left, but those of you on the right, there's a little carriage stone right up in front of this house. So when the carriages pull up, they get right down on one of those carriage stones and enter. This house from 1843, almost 180 years old. These are on the right. These are all colonist homes. They're done by Reardon. The ones on the right, these are shingle style. So you can see all the texture, the shingle style. So it's a colonial revival, or they call them shingle styles, with these gambrel roof styles. 180 years old, but they look like they're, I don't know, they're just timeless, if you will. Example of what you could see through the neighborhood, except these homes. These homes are only right here. And it's actually not Reardon, it's actually Emerson. That house to our left, that's John Calvin Stevens did that. That's a Georgian, and Judd Nelson's uncle lived there. Now everybody's like, well, who's Judd Nelson's uncle? Well, you know, Judd Nelson, the actor, Breakfast Club, he was born and raised here, and his uncle lived there. And also Linda Lavin, she was born and raised here in Portland, on the peninsula actually. Went to the school, both of them went to the same school around the corner, Wayne Fleet. If you ever watched the Alf TV show. Also, another person born here was Stephen King. And this house here to my left, it always reminds me of this Gothic revival, 1849, you know what I mean? And from the rear, it's really, really exciting because, I mean, you don't see many houses like that. It's actually the same home. It's just, you know, it's an illusion created by that widow's walk. And I call that the his and hers, right? And to our right is the Western Cemetery, the second cemetery on the peninsula. And this is where many Civil War veterans were buried. And the people that actually died in the Civil War. And why they had the parade here. And when the parade was interrupted by the fire after about 25 minutes of it going, people, thousands, panicked and ran over each other, over the headstones, and it took over an hour for any of the brigades to get down there, to fight through those crowds and calm those horses. This to our left is another neat building. There's a lot of these. You can see that slate roof there. That's all, that's a mansard style roof. And it always reminds me of back to Stephen King, of one of the movies I really love, and that's adapted from one of his novels, Shawshank Redemption. Great film. And he was born here, like I said, but he wasn't raised here. He was only born here and lived here for a few short years until his father left him and his mother. So he's always used us as an example, or to bring up that sense of abandonment, a sounding board, if you will, an antagonist, if that makes sense. There's the harbor down there to our right, and a captain's home from 1875. And a lot of these are captain's homes, had something to do with the shipping industry. The ones on the right, though, these are set right on the water, and they've got these nice cascading balconies. They're a little bit different from the other side, just about a mirror image, though. These ones to our right, all five, 1907, with Lucian Shipping Company, and one's for sale. There's a few here and there for sale. I don't really know what the prices are or anything like that. I just know it's out of my range, so. And you can see the harbor again. This John Calvin Stevens design to show off its architecture, and they'll wave at us if they're in there. Usually not in there, but. And the last bit, without interruption, these twin mansions from early 1800s fur traders, and then of course this right here. So this right here was there were some of these apartments tore down for that, which we're not doing anymore. These are 1880s, 1890s. It's very important to keep these, as they have a bit of more home sweet home to them, and rich history behind them. And that's a time when they were built. They're mariners and that worked for those shipping captains and dock. Friendlier now than back in the day when it was nicknamed the Hug 'em and Slug 'em. You see, they're having fun. And a lot of times they'll wave. Back in the day, they probably wouldn't wave. And that's the oldest surviving tavern in the peninsula. Really, the Polish tavern. Still open, 1892. Now, everybody thinks it's Russian, but they do serve vodka. Mimosas. I don't know if that's what they're made out of, but back here to our left, that's a neat carriage house that you drop your horse and buggy off in the late 1700s, turn of the 18th, 19th century, stayed in an apartment. So a lot of the buildings repurposed to keep them going. And this beautiful, to our left, bed and breakfast. It was the Danforth and quite affordable. Now it's the Blind Tiger. They changed the name and it's like over $1,000 a night, I heard. So I don't know anymore on that one. Not my price range. There are other bed and breakfasts to choose from, though. All these cars, this is State Street, and up at the top of the hill is a Longfellow statue we saw earlier, and down at the bottom is the bridge, and three beautiful churches. If you want to check these maritime churches, where everybody would go to pray, there was actually more pews than people at the time, if you will. Does anybody have any questions? And if you get a chance, the Irish Heritage Center, it used to be Bartholomew, St. Bartholomew, and it changed from Bartholomew to the Irish Heritage Center in 2009 when the bell tower fell 5 stories, so they had to repurpose it. But if you get a chance to go there, a lot of weddings take place there. It's a huge, beautiful church, and especially on the outside, there's these like gargoyles and sea monsters, because that's what you do, is you go in to pray to be protected from those symbols. And then you leave, and they remind you good behavior out there. So there's the church right there. It's pretty neat. Have you ever heard of the Painted Ladies of San Francisco? Well, we got Painted Ladies as well. But our Painted Ladies have mustaches here to our right. Those are the Painted Ladies with mustaches. A little bit self-explanatory, right? In early 1900s, when electricity first came here, all the doors were built to the side because electricity went through the front. You couldn't build the doors for the front because you hit your head on a live wire. And to our left, there's that carriage stone I was telling you about in front of the Victorian mansion. I'm going to hit the flashers here, let them know they can go around if they want, do whatever. We are a trolley bus. Now, I don't think it's open today, unfortunately. In Boston and New York, they stepped down on that carriage stone to enter those doors. It's an Italian Renaissance revival. So they brought over, in 1858 when this was being built, Italian frescoists to do frescoed ceilings throughout the entirety. And in 1940, it was going to be torn down for a gas station, actually, like many buildings like this throughout America. And a lot of the buildings in World War II over there in Europe were destroyed. But the Lady Victorian Society came to the rescue at that time to save it from destruction, and it's 90% original furniture on the inside. And she bought the best, Olive did, of the era, Italianate and European and American, still in there. So if you've ever watched, you know, like Gone with the Wind, this is basically Gone with the Wind before Ransacked or that kind of thing, you know, so it's a really, really, and also, like I said, over there in Europe, they need to destroy, let alone have original, you know, furniture according to the purchase orders. That's a really rare thing for any period. As we continue on, and it's also a national landmark. And as we continue on, some of these buildings actually survived the Great Fire, like that one to our left. But everything to our right was destroyed, because this is where, down this way to our right, was where the lumber yard and the rum distillery and the sugar refinery were. And it set on fire there on a 20-mile-an-hour sea breeze right through the center. So this here to our left, 1790, one of the original 26 brick homes on the peninsula in 1800. Like the Longfellow, that survived. And those over there, those 1700s survived. Those are wooden homes. But it all went through here. As you can tell, basically, after the tour, I hope I get a more sense of direction, feel a little bit more at home, and why our city looks like it does for the most part. There's much more to explore, of course. And someone that really liked to explore, and what I mean by that, when he went out west to Hollywood, is coming up here. Anybody heard of John Ford?
Yeah.
Here's the great director, John Ford. He was born and raised here. Is John Feeney to our left there, sitting in his director's chair. Surrounded by the 4 Academy Awards he won for Best Director. And all the greats look up to him, you know, like Stanley Kubrick and Ford Coppola and Oliver Stone or Scorsese, Spielberg, all of them pay homage to him. He did over 140 films. When he left here, his name was Feeney after high school, because he was a football player. They called him the Bull. He was a fullback. There's a bar in town, Bull Feeney's. And they went out to Hollywood, and they did 8 films together. He basically started his career. And they had a lot in common. They liked to fish. And John Ford had a place out on Cushing Island. John Wayne visited all the time. Some of the films they did together was The Quiet One, Stagecoach, The Searchers, She Wore a Yellow Ribbon, really good one. But John Ford did some films with Henry Fonda too. My Clementine, one about Wyatt Earp, and also, which I think most people are familiar with, Grapes of Wrath, right, with Henry Fonda, which is a Steinbeck novel. And for me, that's probably one of the best adaptations from a novel to a movie I've ever seen. So it gives you an idea of, you know, how great a director he was. And down that way is where we already were. You can see the Customs House again with that mansard style. I mean, this is a beautiful marble architecture. If you ever heard of the artist Edward Hopper, he did that a few times. Painted that, the Victorian Mansion. He did Nighthawks. That's one scene readapted with James Dean and Humphrey Bogart. Yeah, Moore Street, right through there. And now, when you walk through there, of course, it's all cobblestone, so be careful. But a lot of nice restaurants, and all these stores we saw from that one side, and from here, you'll be able to pretty much enter through there. Beal's Ice Cream at the end, one of my favorites. They do this like waffle cone. It's nice and fresh waffle cone, warm waffle cone, cold ice cream. $3 Dewey's, $3 drafts, really good pub food. Basically, anywhere you go, you can get lobster rolls. But I always suggest going to the park to make your own. Go get the fresh bread and get them steamed at any of the markets for real cheap. And go there and do it the old-fashioned way. This was all the water under here in the 1820s, all the way up till the 1850s, when right in front of us, the Grand Trunk Railroad was filled in. So it's slate and granite and other types of stone that we have everywhere, filled in under here, big sections of it. If you want, you can sometimes see under the, at low tide, you can see under the wharfs. So this was the original Old Port, which the big sail ships would come up to. So a lot of people that live here don't even know why they call it Old Port, but you do because you took the tour. Good for you.
There you go.
Yeah, lobsters, well, I know, raise a hand, how many people are going to have lobster while you're here? How many people love butter? So if you know, if you didn't raise your hand the first time, lobster is definitely a good reason to have butter. And when it comes to lobster, they don't like to share their food with each other. Does anybody want to take a guess why? Remember, we learned it in grade school. Why do lobsters not like to share their lobster? Because they're shellfish. Yep. I almost got him. He stopped right there real quick. I'm sorry, but whatever. All right, everybody. So now, when it comes, thank you very much. When it comes to your lobster and your whoopie pies and your moxie today, just be like lobsters. Be shellfish. Have a good time, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your Labor Day, and you earned it.
Do you want indoor or outdoor? I don't know. Huh? Casa Blanca Cruises. Huh? ఎక్కడ
దగ్గర మంచి వారలేదు దాన్ని బట్టి
Yeah, 12:45. Yeah, 12:45. Thank you. Wait. Okay.
I don't know what happened to it eventually. I mean,
Right.
Here's the pieces that they've at least kept. The rest of it may have, who knows, gone back into
Right.
recycling.
Probably to the scrap. Yeah.
Yeah. But anyhow, there's 3,000 miles of coastline in Maine.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Exactly. That's what I was reading, and there are like 3,500 islands.
So if you go from Washington D.C. down around Florida all the way back up to Texas, you're at 3,000 miles.
Exactly. That's what I was thinking.
And so this is the reason why. 'Cause it looks like this.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
It's all peninsulas and islands and
Right.
and
So the 3,500 is the actual shoreline, not the distance.
Yeah, so and then
okay.
there's other ones that too that are like weird little statistics, like Alaska and Hawaii both.
Right.
Alaska apparently has enough on seashore high tide, low tide,
Right.
land coming and going in between the tides
Right.
to like almost like equal like Texas or something like that. I mean
Okay.
the same property value.
Right.
Here's Alaska, here's Texas.
Right.
And there's so much shoreline around Alaska that it,
Exactly.
the shore just exceeds, comes back and it goes in one,
Right.
cycle.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so there's that, and then I don't know how much we got going on here, but there's definitely marsh areas that you can go and
Right.
and the marsh squeezes back up in, which maybe in part some places in India too then that does that
Right.
kind of thing with the tide.
Okay.
The tide
Yeah.
pushing the river back.
Exactly. Yeah. I was going on the boat tour, and they were explaining me there is a connectivity between two islands on the low tide. You can actually drive between those islands.
Oh right.
Yeah, I was on the boat tour,
Yeah.
and he was explaining me how one jeep got caught in the current or something like that because of a flat tire, and it got carried away by the. And
And here's
yeah.
the fun thing too, is planes come in from over there.
Right. Yeah.
All the way in through the gut here,
Right.
and then they'll go down through and up the river. They'll follow the river up and into the airport inside, so they don't go over any land.
Oh, okay.
So it's gonna fly out over the Fall River.
I see.
There's a fun app for that too.
Yeah, the flight path.
It's kind of hard to see, but you
Right.
can see it's still gonna follow the way into.
Exactly.
This camera is so good too. I carried a Sigma Foveon lens
Okay.
in a couple of bodies like that, and original film back when you had original film.
Oh yeah.
before-
Your
before
film
it was
camera.
better than
Exactly.
digital.
Exactly. I love the film too, but you can't take too many shots though.
Well, no, you buy, the 6-plug battery backup charger
Right.
things
Right.
there,
Right. Yeah.
an inverter,
Oh.
and about 3 extra sets of batteries for the camera, which took 2, and then something else took something else, and whatever else, and it was a pain in the ass. So I brought them all on my flight.
Wow.
So when I got to the car, I rented my car, put all this shit in the bottom of the car, plugged it all in, got the inverter plugged in, got the battery charger plugged in, and just would roll batteries in and out of the thing all day long because I was driving down the road, take pictures, do
Right.
whatever, and get it back to the car and update the files because this thing will tow 4,000 pictures.
Wow.
So it's insane. But anyway, back then it was so
Right.
cool.
Exactly.
So I took